Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the UES Vengeance. His rough hands held tight to the command desk as he stared at the huge alien ship on the main screen. The enemy vessel was 10 times bigger than anything humans had ever built. Its dark metal surface was covered with strange symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. 3 days ago, everyone on Earth had been celebrating. The first colony ship had launched toward the Kepler system, carrying 5,000 brave souls to start a new life among the stars. Children had watched the launch on their school screens. Families had gathered in parks to see the bright trail. A Vengeance disappearing into space? It was supposed to be the beginning of humanity's great journey to the stars. Now everything had changed. The Zephyrian Collective had arrived with 20 massive warships, each one bristling with weapons that could crack a planet in half. They had appeared at the edge of the solar system without warning, their ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Like hungry wolves surrounding a flock of sheep, the alien voice crackled through the communication system, harsh and mechanical, as the translator tried to make sense of their strange language. Primitive species of the third planet, you have violated sacred space designated for expansion by the Collective. Your continued existence is conditional upon immediate submission to our authority. Morrison felt his jaw clench. The aliens spoke. Like humans were nothing more than insects that had wandered into their garden. He had spent 20 years in space, fighting pirates and exploring dead worlds, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes turned from her station, her face pale but determined. She had been with Morrison for 5 years through asteroid mining disputes and rescue missions in the outer system. Captain, we're getting the same message from all their ships. They're giving us 12 hours to evacuate all our space stations and prepare for occupation. The captain looked around his bridge. The crew was scared, he could see it in their eyes, but they were still at their posts. That was the thing about humans, Morrison thought. They might be afraid, but they would not run. What about our fleet? He asked. Hayes checked her display. 8 ships total, sir. All of them built for exploration and light patrol duty. The aliens have 20 warships, each one the size of a city block. Morrison nodded grimly. Earth's United Defense Fleet had been created more for show than for real war. Most politicians had believed that any alien contact would be peaceful, that advanced civilizations would be wise and kind. They had been wrong, the alien transmission continued, the voice showing no emotion as it delivered humanity's death sentence. Your species will be evaluated for usefulness to the Collective. Those deemed suitable will be relocated to labor colonies. Those found lacking will be eliminated to make room for more efficient use of planetary resources. Labor colonies, Morrison repeated, the words tasting bitter in his mouth. They want to make us slaves. Sir, he said quietly, intelligence reports say the Zephyrians have conquered 17 other species in the past century. Each one surrendered after a brief show of force. They've never had to fight a real war. Morrison studied the alien ships on the screen. They were beautiful in their way, sleek and deadly like cosmic predators. But there was something about their formation that bothered him. They were spread out, positioned to intimidate rather than fight. It was the arrangement of conquerors who expected easy victory. Get me a channel to Admiral Brooks on Luna Station, he ordered, and prep the shuttle bay. If these aliens want to talk surrender, they can do it face to face. The communication officer, a young man named Pete Collins, looked up from his station. Sir, they're demanding we send our senior officers to their flagship for surrender negotiations. Are they now? Morrison's voice was cold. How thoughtful of them. Hayes moved closer to the captain's chair. Sir, this could be a trap. They might be planning to take our command staff prisoner. Maybe, Morrison agreed. But it might also be our only chance to get close to them, to see what we're really dealing with. On the main screen, the alien flagship hung in space like a giant metal spider. Its surface was covered with weapon ports and sensor arrays, technology that was centuries ahead of anything humans had built. But Morrison had learned something important during his years in space. Advanced technology did not always mean advanced thinking. The communication system crackled again. Human vessels, you have 11 hours and 43 minutes to comply with collective demands. Failure to do so will result in the sterilization of your homeworld and all orbital installations. Morrison felt a cold anger building in his chest. These aliens had come to his home system, threatened his people, and demanded surrender without even trying to talk first. They treated humans like animals to be herded or destroyed. "Collins, get me a direct channel to Earth Command," he said. "Priority Alpha." The young officer's fingers flew over his controls. "Channel open, sir." "Earth Command, this is Captain Morrison aboard the Vengeance. I'm requesting permission to accept the alien invitation for direct negotiations." The reply came back within seconds. "Morrison, this is General Stone. Permission granted. But Jake, be careful. We're dealing with something we've never seen before." Morrison had known Patricia Stone for 15 years. She was not the kind of person who scared easily, but he could hear the worry in her voice. The aliens had rattled everyone, from the newest. "Recruit to the most experienced officers. Understood, General." "I'll be taking Admiral Brooks and a small diplomatic team. If something goes wrong, you'll need to make the hard choices." "Copy that, Captain. And Jake, good luck." The communication ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Morrison looked at his crew, seeing the fear and determination mixed on their faces. They were good people, all of them. They had signed up to explore the stars, to push the boundaries of human knowledge and experience. Instead, they were facing the possible end of their species. "Hayes, you're with me," he said. "Collins, maintain communication with the fleet. If we don't report back in 6 hours, assume we're dead and act accordingly." The young officer nodded, his face serious. "Yes. Sir, what should I tell them if they ask about our plans?" Morrison paused at the bridge exit, looking back at the alien ship on the screen. "Tell them we're going to find out what these things are really afraid of." As he walked through the corridors of his ship, Morrison thought about the message the aliens had sent. They called humans primitive, but they had still brought 20 warships to deal with 8 human vessels. That seemed like overkill unless they were worried about something. The shuttle bay was already preparing for departure when Morrison arrived. Admiral Brooks was there, along with 2 other officers and a scientist from the xenobiology department. They were the best humanity had to offer, but they were walking into a situation none of them truly understood. "Ready, Captain?" Admiral Brooks asked. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, someone who had spent 40 years in space, and had never backed down from a challenge. "As ready as we can be, Admiral," Morrison replied. "Let's go see what these Zephyrians really want." The shuttle launched into space, heading toward the alien flagship. Through the viewport, Morrison could see the other human ships, small and fragile compared to the enemy fleet. But there was something about them that made him proud. They were not running, they were not hiding. They were human ships, crewed by human beings, and they would face whatever came with courage and determination. The alien ship grew larger as they approached, its surface covered with details that spoke of advanced technology and vast resources. But Morrison was no longer impressed by their size or their weapons. He was thinking about something else entirely. He was thinking about what it meant to be human in a universe that wanted to make them slaves. Admiral Kate Brooks had seen many things in her 40 years of space service. She had watched pirates try to board mining ships in the asteroid belt. She had led rescue teams through solar storms that could fry a person in seconds. She had negotiated with angry colonists who wanted independence from Earth, but nothing had prepared her for this moment as she sat in the cold, white room aboard the alien flagship. The Zephyrian High Commander, called Velthag, stood across from her, and he was terrifying to look at. He was nearly 8 feet tall, with a body that looked like it was made of dark crystal. His skin seemed to be some kind of natural armor, with sharp edges that caught the harsh light. His eyes were not like human eyes at all. They were made up of hundreds of tiny parts, like the eyes of an insect, but much bigger and more frightening. 2 other aliens flanked him on either side. They were smaller than their commander, but still much bigger than any human. Their eyes never blinked as they stared at the human visitors. Brooks could feel their contempt, as if they were looking at talking animals rather than intelligent beings. Captain Morrison sat beside her, his face calm but his hands clenched into fists under the table. Lieutenant Commander Hayes was on her other side, taking notes on a small tablet. The fourth member of their group was Dr. Richard Webb, a scientist who studied alien life forms. He had been excited to meet real aliens right up until he saw them. The room itself was strange and uncomfortable. The walls were smooth metal with no decorations. The lighting was too bright and came from everywhere at once, making it hard to see clearly. The chairs were built for alien bodies, forcing the humans to sit in awkward positions. Everything about the place was designed to make visitors feel small and helpless. "Your species shows promise," Velthik began, his voice coming through a translation device that made it sound mechanical and cold. "The collective has use for sturdy worker stock. Submit now, and 20% of your population will be preserved for labor assignments." Brooks kept her face neutral, though inside she felt sick. These creatures were talking about her people like they were cattle to be sorted and processed. She had to fight to keep her voice steady when she asked, "And the other 80%? Unnecessary." The alien commander replied, his mandibles clicking together in what might have been laughter. "Your world will be repurposed for more efficient use. This is standard procedure for primitive species." The translator made his words sound even more horrible. Brooks realized that to these aliens, the death of 6 billion humans was just business as usual. They had probably had this same conversation with representatives of other species, offering the same terrible choice. The hegemony species resisted for 6 hours before accepting wisdom. Velthik continued, as if he was discussing the weather. "The Corin held out for 2 days. How long will humanity require to see reason?" Hayes leaned forward slightly. "What if we refuse entirely?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop. All 3 aliens turned their insect eyes toward her, and Brooks saw something dangerous in their gaze. Velthik's mandibles spread wider, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Then you join the Vraxian extinction," he said. "They thought their courage would save them. We converted their home star into a weapon against their neighboring system as a lesson to others." Brooks felt her blood turn to ice. These monsters had destroyed an entire star system, probably killing billions of innocent people, just to make a point. The casual way Velthik spoke about it made it even worse. "How many?" Morrison asked quietly. "How many what?" Velthik replied, "How many species have you conquered?" The alien commander seemed pleased by the question. 17 in the past century. Each one eventually saw the wisdom of joining the collective. Some took longer than others, but they all came to understand their place in the greater order. Dr. Webb spoke up for the first time. What happened to their cultures? Their art, their history, their way of life? Irrelevant, Velthik answered. Primitive cultures are replaced with more efficient systems. The collective provides order and purpose. Individual desires are unnecessary complications. Brooks studied the alien as he spoke. There was something in his manner that bothered her. He was trying to project authority and control, but underneath she sensed something else. Nervousness, maybe, or uncertainty. "Tell me about the Vraxi," she said. "The ones you made extinct." The alien's mandibles clicked again, but this time the sound was different, less confident. They were a warrior species. They refused all reasonable offers of integration. Their destruction was regrettable but necessary. They fought back. Morrison said it was not a question. "They tried," Velthik replied. "Their ships were fast and their weapons were primitive but effective. They caused some damage before we ended their rebellion." Brooks caught the slight hesitation in his voice. The Vraxi had not gone quietly. They had made the aliens pay for their conquest, and that memory still bothered the Zephyrian commander. "How long did they resist?" Hayes asked. 3 months. Velthik answered, and for the first time his voice carried a note of irritation. "They refused to accept the inevitable. They forced us to take extreme measures. 3 months. A species with primitive weapons had held out for 3 months against this advanced alien fleet." Brooks filed that information away. If the Vrexy could resist for that long, maybe there was hope for humanity. What made them different from the others? Dr. Webb asked, Velthek's compound eyes fixed on the scientist. They were born on a hostile world. High gravity, dangerous predators, frequent natural disasters. It made them stubborn and violent. They did not understand when they were defeated. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. The Vraxi had been what humans would call a Deathworld species, and that had made them harder to conquer. Brooks thought about Earth with its earthquakes and hurricanes, its ice ages and volcanic eruptions. Humanity had been shaped by constant struggle against a planet that tried to kill them. What about the others? Morrison asked. The 16 species that surrendered. What kind of worlds did they come from? Garden worlds, mostly, Velthek replied. Stable climates, gentle environments. They were wise enough to recognize superior force when they encountered it. Brooks felt a cold smile touch her lips. The aliens had conquered garden world species. Beings who had evolved in safe, comfortable environments. They had never faced anything like humanity, a species that had clawed its way to the top of the food chain on one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. We need time to consider your offer, she said finally. You have 9 hours remaining, Velthek replied. After that, the collective will proceed with standard pacification protocols. The meeting ended with the aliens escorting the human delegation back to their shuttle. As they walked through the corridors of the alien ship, Brooks took note of everything she saw. The design was elegant but seemed focused on efficiency rather than durability. The crew members they passed were tall and graceful, but they moved carefully, as if they were afraid of breaking something. These aliens had never lived on a world that tested them every day. They had never faced the kind of challenges that forged beings like humans. That might be the key to everything. Back on the shuttle, heading toward the human fleet, Morrison broke the silence. They're afraid of us. What makes you say that? Webb asked. Did you see how they reacted when we asked about the Vraxi? They're still bothered by that fight, even though they won. And they brought 20 ships to deal with our 8. That's not confidence, that's fear, Brooks nodded. They've never dealt with a Deathworld species that has advanced technology. The Vraxi were primitive, we're not. As they approached the UES Vengeance, Brooks made her decision. The aliens expected humanity to surrender like all the others. They expected garden world logic from a species that had never known a gentle day on their home planet. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The emergency meeting of the United Earth Council had been going on for 18 hours straight. President Alan Carter stood at the front of the great chamber, his face gray with exhaustion and worry. Around him sat the representatives of every nation on Earth, along with military leaders, scientists, and diplomats. The air was thick with tension as humanity faced the most important decision in its history. The debate had been fierce from the very beginning. Half the council members wanted to surrender immediately, believing it was the only way to save some of humanity. The other half refused to even consider giving up, arguing that slavery was worse than death. Between them sat the undecided, scared people who did not know what choice would be right. The military situation is hopeless, said General Patricia Stone, her voice heavy with defeat. Our ships are outgunned by a factor of 10 to 1. Even if we somehow manage to defeat their current fleet, our intelligence report suggests they have hundreds more ships within a month's travel time. She gestured to the holographic display showing the alien fleet positions. Each of their vessels carries enough firepower to level a major city. Their shields can absorb anything we can throw at them. Their weapons can punch through our strongest armor like it was paper. Secretary of Defense Bill Murphy nodded grimly. We have run every simulation we can think of. In 97% of scenarios, the human fleet is destroyed within the first hour of combat. In the remaining 3%, we might take 1 or 2 of their ships with us before we die. The French representative, a woman named Marie Dubois, stood up. Then we must negotiate. If we surrender now, at least some of our people will survive. If we fight, everyone dies. Survive as slaves, shot back the Russian delegate Viktor Petrov. What kind of life is that for our children? Better to die free than live in chains. President Carter held up his hand for silence. Dr. Webb, you were on the alien ship. Tell us what you learned. Dr. Richard Webb stood slowly, his face troubled. Zephyrians are not like us. They think of other species as resources to be managed. They have no concept of individual rights or freedoms. To them, we are simply useful animals that can be trained to work. He paused, looking around the chamber. But I noticed something else. They are afraid of us. Not obviously, but it was there. They have conquered 17 other species, but none of them were like humanity. What do you mean? Asked the Brazilian representative. All of their previous conquests came from what they call garden worlds. Safe places with stable climates and gentle environments. The only species that gave them real trouble were the Vraxi, and they came from a dangerous world like Earth. Captain Morrison, who had been called back from his ship to address the council, stood up. The Vraxi held out for 3 months with primitive weapons. We are not primitive. But they were wiped out, General Stone pointed out. The aliens destroyed their entire star system. After 3 months of fighting, Morrison replied. 3 months of losses and damage that still bothers their commander. I saw it in his eyes when he talked about them. The Vraxi hurt them badly before they died. The Chinese delegate Dr. Chun Wei asked, What are you suggesting, Captain? Morrison walked to the center of the chamber. I am suggesting that we are not the same as the other species they have conquered. We did not evolve in a safe, comfortable environment. Earth has been trying to kill us since we first stood upright. We have survived ice ages, plagues, volcanic eruptions, and asteroids. We have fought wars against each other for thousands of years, he gestured to the display showing Earth. Look at our planet. 90% of it is either too hot, too cold, too deep, or too high for most life forms. We live in the thin shell between the deadly vacuum of space and the crushing depths of the ocean. We call it home, Dr. Webb nodded. The captain is right. I have studied the data on the other conquered species. They all came from worlds with stable, predictable environments. They never had to adapt to constant change and danger. But what does that mean for us? Asked the Indian representative. Morrison smiled grimly. It means we think differently than they do. Garden world species surrender when they face superior force because they have never had to fight for survival. We have been fighting for survival since we first drew breath. The debate continued for another hour, but slowly the mood in the chamber began to shift. The representative started to see what Morrison was getting at. Humanity was not like the other species the aliens had conquered. They were something new and dangerous. Finally, President Carter called for a vote. All in favor of surrender? 12 hands went up out of nearly 200 representatives. All opposed? The rest of the chamber raised their hands, a sea of defiance in the face of overwhelming odds. Then it is decided, Carter said. We fight. As the council members filed out, Morrison approached Admiral Brooks. Admiral, I need to talk to you. About something? They found a quiet corner away from the crowds. What is it, Captain? Brooks asked. I have been thinking about what the alien commander said. About how they destroyed the Vraxi star system. That was not just a military action. That was a message to other species about what happens when you resist, Brooks nodded. Fear tactics. Make one example so terrible that everyone else surrenders without a fight. Exactly. But what if we could turn that against them? What if we could make them afraid of us? How? Morrison looked around to make sure no one was listening. The aliens. Think in terms of overwhelming force. Bring enough ships and weapons and the enemy will surrender. But humans do not think like that. We think in terms of making the enemy pay such a high price that victory is not worth it. Guerrilla warfare, Brooks said quietly. Not just guerrilla. Warfare, psychological warfare. Make them understand that conquering humanity will cost them more than they are willing to pay. Brooks studied the captain's face. What do you have in mind? I want to study everything we know about their previous conquests. Find out what made the Vraxi different. Learn why they were able to resist for so long. And then? And then we show the Zephyrians what happens when a Deathworld species decides to fight back. They were interrupted by Dr. Webb, who hurried over with a tablet in his hands. "Captain Admiral, you need to see this. I have been analyzing the recordings from the alien ship." He showed them the screen, which displayed biological data about the Zephyrian crew. "Look at this. Their bone density is less than half of ours. Their muscle mass is optimized for their low-gravity homeworld. Most importantly, look at their stress responses." The data showed chemical markers that indicated how the aliens reacted to pressure and danger. They have never evolved effective fight or flight responses. When they encounter something threatening, they freeze up rather than react. Morrison felt a cold smile cross his face. "They are not warriors, they are bureaucrats with big guns." "That explains a lot," Brooks said. "They rely on intimidation?" "Because they have never had to actually fight a determined enemy." Dr. Webb nodded. "The Vraxi were primitive, but they were also aggressive. They kept attacking even when they were losing. The Zephyrians had to destroy them completely because they could not figure out how to make them stop fighting. And now they have to deal with us," Morrison said. "A species that has been fighting wars for thousands of years and has the technology to make it hurt." As they talked, reports came in from around the solar system. The human fleet was moving into position, not to attack the aliens directly, but to implement a plan that had been forming in Morrison's mind since the meeting on the alien ship. The Zephyrians expected humanity to either surrender or fight a conventional battle that they could easily win. They were not prepared for what was about to happen. They were about to learn that humans had been preparing for this moment for decades, and that a species forged in the fires of a death world did not give up easily. The real war was about to begin. High Commander Velthic stood in the control center of his flagship, watching the countdown timer tick toward 0. Around him, his crew moved with practiced efficiency, but he could sense their growing unease. The humans had not responded to the ultimatum, and that silence was becoming more troubling with each passing minute. For the past century, no species had ever let the deadline pass without surrendering. The hegemony had sent their submission after 6 hours. The Corn had held out for 2 days before accepting the inevitable. Even the stubborn Vraxi had tried to negotiate before their final, doomed resistance, but the humans had said nothing. Their ships remained in formation around their homeworld, weapons powered but not targeting the Zephyrian fleet. It was as if they were waiting for something, and that made Velthic nervous in ways he did not want to admit. "High Commander," his communications officer Zex-High reported, "we are receiving a transmission from the human vessels. They are requesting a final meeting." Velthic's mandibles clicked with irritation. So the humans wanted to surrender with ceremony after all. Perhaps they needed to maintain their dignity before their people. Many species had similar customs. "Very well," he said. "They wish to submit with honor. Bring their leaders aboard." 20 minutes later, the human delegation arrived in the same conference room where the first meeting had taken place. But this time, something was different. Captain Morrison walked in first, his shoulders straight and his eyes cold. Behind him came Admiral Brooks, General Stone, and a woman Velthic had not seen before. "I am Dr. Elena Vasquez," the new human said as they sat down. "I study alien life forms for Earth Science Division." Velthic noticed that Morrison was carrying a sealed metal container. The captain placed it carefully on the table between them, his movements deliberate and controlled. There was something about his manner that set off warning signals in the alien commander's mind. "We have considered your offer," Morrison began, his voice calm but hard as steel. "But first, we thought you should understand exactly what you are dealing with." He opened the container and pulled out what appeared to be a human skull. The bone was old and yellowed with age, but it was clearly from Morrison's own species. The captain placed it on the polished surface of the table with care. The 3 Zephyrians recoiled slightly. Their compound eyes focused on the skull, studying its heavy bone structure and the large brain cavity. It was different from the skulls of other species they had encountered, thicker and more robust. "This belonged to one of our ancestors," Morrison continued, his eyes never leaving Velthic's face. A human who lived 50,000 years ago. Do you know what killed him? The aliens remained silent, disturbed by the human's calm manner and the presence of the ancient skull. Another human, Dr. Vasquez said, her voice matter of fact. You see, we have been at war with ourselves for millions of years. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. Ice ages that lasted for thousands of years. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun. Earthquakes that could split continents. Predators that would give your worst nightmares form. She gestured to the skull. This man survived all of that. He lived through winters that would freeze your blood solid. He hunted animals that could tear him apart with their bare claws. He fought other humans for territory, for resources, for survival itself. Morrison picked up the skull, holding it up to the light. We did not just survive on Earth, we thrived. We multiplied. We spread across every continent into every environment. We built cities and deserts where nothing should live. We created homes at the bottom of the ocean and on top of the highest mountains. His voice grew colder. We learned to fight not just for victory, but for survival. When we were outnumbered, we learned to be smarter. When we were outgunned, we learned to be more vicious. When we were losing, we learned to make the enemy pay such a high price that winning would not be worth it. Velthic felt a chill run through his crystalline body. The human's words were not boasting or desperate threats. They were simple statements of fact, delivered with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. We have been fighting and dying and clawing our way up from the bottom of the food chain for millions of years, Morrison continued. We have survived plagues that killed 90% of our population. We have rebuilt our civilizations after they were destroyed by natural disasters. We have faced extinction dozens of times and come back stronger each time. He stood up, still holding the skull. We have fought wars that lasted for decades. We have created weapons that could destroy our own planet. We have built cities that could survive nuclear fire and ships that could cross the void between stars. General Stone spoke for the first time. Do you know what we call our homeworld, Commander? We call it Earth, but we also call it something else. We call it home. And humans will do anything to protect their home. Morrison stepped closer to the alien commander. Velthic was nearly 8 feet tall, but somehow the humans seemed to tower over him. So when you come to our system with your 20 ships and your threats, when you demand that we kneel before your collective and accept slavery, I have just one question for you. The captain's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire room. Surrender to who? Without warning, Morrison hurled the ancient skull across the room. It struck the far wall with a crack that echoed like a gunshot, shattering into pieces that scattered across the floor. The sound seemed to hang in the air for a long moment. The 3 aliens stared at the fragments of bone, their compound eyes wide with shock. They had never seen such a casual display of violence from a species that was supposed to be surrendering. You dare threaten the collective? Velthic finally managed to say, his voice shaking with outrage and fear. Your pathetic fleet cannot stand against our might. Morrison smiled, and there was something in that expression that made the alien commander's exoskeleton shimmer with defensive coloration. It was the smile of a predator that had found prey. You are right about one thing, Morrison said. We cannot win a straight fight against your fleet. But here is what you do not understand. About humans, Commander, we do not fight fair. Admiral Brooks stepped forward, her small frame somehow radiating menace. While you were giving us ultimatums and making threats, we were learning. Every communication you sent, every scan you made of our system, every breath you took on our ships, we were studying you. Dr. Vasquez activated a tablet showing biological data that made the Zephyrian's eyes widen in alarm. Your atmospheric requirements, your nutritional needs, your reproductive cycles, your genetic structure. We know your homeworld's location from your navigation computers. We know your supply lines, your military doctrine, your political structure. You cannot possibly have gathered such intelligence in 3 days, Velthic protested, but his voice carried a note of desperate uncertainty. Morrison laughed, and the sound was harsh and cold. 3 days? Commander, we have been preparing for this moment since we first looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone. Every human child learns about the possibility of hostile alien contact. Every colony ship carries weapons. Every space station has emergency protocols. We have been planning for invasion scenarios for decades. General Stone activated a holographic display showing human positions throughout the solar system. You brought 20 ships to intimidate us into submission. What you did not realize is that we have been militarizing everything we have built for the past 50 years. Our mining stations are now weapon platforms. Our cargo ships carry nuclear charges. Our research facilities have been converted into military production centers. But more importantly, Morrison continued, his voice like ice, we have already sent ships to your home system. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Velthek's mandibles spread wide in shock and fear. Not warships, Commander, Morrison said softly. Something much worse. The silence in the conference room stretched like a bowstring about to snap. High Commander Velthek stared at the human captain, his compound eyes reflecting the harsh lights as he tried to process what he had just heard. The fragments of the ancient skull lay scattered across the floor, a reminder of the violence that humans carried within them. What kind of ships? Velthek asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Morrison's smile grew wider, showing his teeth. Cargo vessels. Old mining ships. Transport freighters that most people would not look at twice. They left our system 2 weeks ago, long before you arrived. That is impossible, the alien commander protested. Our sensors would have detected any military vessels approaching our territory. Who said anything about military vessels? Admiral Brooks asked. We told you, Commander. Humans do not fight fair. We do not announce our intentions with big fleets and ultimatums. Dr. Vasquez tapped her tablet, bringing up a star chart that showed the route between Earth and the Zephyrian home system. Your people never paid attention to our civilian traffic. Why would they? What threat could a few old cargo ships pose to a mighty civilization like yours? Velthek's mandibles clicked nervously. What are these ships carrying? Gifts, Morrison said, his voice cold as space itself. But biological agents specifically designed to target your species. Viruses that will attack your respiratory system. Bacteria that will consume your food supply. Genetic weapons that will make your people sterile. The alien commander's exoskeleton went completely white. You would commit genocide? You offered to exterminate 80% of our species. General Stone replied, her voice hard as steel. We are simply returning the favor. Morrison leaned forward, placing his hands flat on the table. But here is the beautiful part, Commander. We do not want to use those weapons. We would much rather they just sit in their cargo holds, waiting for a signal that never comes. What signal? Velthek asked, though he already suspected the answer. Every 72 hours, we send a coded transmission to those ships. A simple message that tells them to continue waiting. If they do not receive that message, they will assume Earth has been destroyed and you have killed our people. Admiral Brooks smiled grimly. And then they will deliver their cargo to every world in your empire. Your homeworld, your colonies, your military bases, all of them will receive our gifts. You are bluffing, Velthek said, but his voice lacked conviction. Dr. Vasquez activated another display, showing detailed biological data about Zephyrian physiology. Are we? We have had 3 days to study your people? Your immune systems, your genetic structure, your environmental requirements. Creating targeted biological weapons is not difficult when you know exactly what you are targeting. Morrison stood up, towering over the alien commander despite being shorter. You want to know the difference between your species and ours, Commander? You conquer through intimidation. You show up with overwhelming force and expect everyone to surrender. But humans conquer through planning and preparation. He began pacing around the table, his movements predatory. We have been studying warfare for thousands of years. We have fought enemies who outnumbered us, who had better weapons, who controlled the high ground. And we learned that victory does not always go to the strongest. Sometimes it goes to the most ruthless. General Stone activated another holographic display, showing human military installations throughout the solar system. You brought 20 ships to cow us into submission. What you did not realize is that we have been militarizing everything we have built for decades. Our space stations are armed. Our asteroid mining facilities have been converted into weapons platforms. Our colony ships carry enough firepower to level a city. But more importantly, Admiral Brooks added, we have been preparing for this exact scenario. Every human military academy has courses on asymmetric warfare. Every colony has emergency protocols for invasion. Every ship captain knows how to turn their vessel into a weapon. Morrison stopped pacing and fixed his gaze on Velthek. You know what the biggest mistake you made was, Commander? You gave us 3 days to prepare. 3 days to put our plans into motion. 3 days to show you what happens when you threaten a Deathworld species. Your ships are still outnumbered, Velthek said desperately. Even if you fight, you cannot win. Win, Morrison laughed, and the sound was harsh and bitter. Commander, you still do not understand. We are not trying to win. We are trying to make you lose. He gestured to the scattered pieces of the ancient skull. That man lived 50,000 years ago. He never saw a starship or a laser weapon. But he understood something that you do not. Sometimes survival is not about being the strongest. Sometimes it is about being too dangerous to attack. Dr. Vasquez brought up another display, showing the locations of human colonies throughout the galaxy. You want to occupy our worlds? Fine, but every single one of them is rigged to self-destruct. You will not get our resources or our technology. You will get poisoned ground and radioactive ruins. You want to enslave our people? Admiral Brooks asked. Good luck. We have been programming our citizens for resistance since childhood. Every human knows how to sabotage equipment, how to spread dissent, how to turn your own weapons against you. Morrison placed both hands on the table and leaned forward until his face was inches from Velthek's compound eyes. And if you somehow manage to defeat us, if you kill every human in this system, our cargo ships will still deliver their payload to your worlds. Your people will die slowly and painfully, knowing that they brought it on themselves. The alien commander was trembling now, his crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the lights like a prism. What do you want? Simple, Morrison said, straightening up. You are going to take your fleet and leave our system. You are going to send word to your collective that humanity is not to be touched. And you are going to pray that we never have reason to visit your worlds. And if we refuse? Morrison's smile was devoid of warmth or mercy. Then you will learn why the galaxy should fear a species that evolved on a death world. Because we do not just survive, Commander. We adapt, we overcome. And we never, ever forgive. Velthek looked around the room at the human faces, seeing something in their eyes that his species had never encountered before. These were not the desperate pleadings of a conquered people or the empty threats of those who did not understand their situation. This was the cold, calculated fury of apex predators who had been threatened. You have 1 hour to begin withdrawing from our system, Morrison continued. After that, we start demonstrating why humans are the universe's most successful invasive species. The alien commander tried one last desperate gambit. The collective will send more ships. Hundreds of them. You cannot threaten us all. Can we not? Admiral Brooks asked. Commander, in the past 3 days, we have identified the locations of 47 Zephyrian colonies, 12 major military installations, and your primary shipbuilding facilities. How long do you think it would take us to send cargo ships? To all of them? Morrison walked to the shattered remains of the skull and picked up one of the larger pieces. This belonged to a human who lived in caves and hunted with wooden spears. He never imagined that his descendants would travel to the stars. But he passed something down to us, something that every human carries in their bones. He held up the bone fragment, studying it in the light. The knowledge that sometimes you have to hurt the monster so badly that it never comes back. the understanding that mercy is a luxury that only the strong can afford. He dropped the fragment, and it clattered on the floor. "We are offering you mercy now, Commander. Do not mistake it for weakness." As the human delegation filed out of the conference room, Velthik stood alone among the scattered pieces of ancient bone, finally understanding why his intelligence reports had classified Earth as a death world. It was not just the planet that was dangerous, it was everything that had learned to call it home. 2 hours later, the Zephyrian fleet departed the Sol system, leaving behind only a quantum communication buoy with a simple message: "Warning, Deathworlder species. Approach at your own risk." The message would be heeded. Word spread through the galaxy of the humans who had faced down the collective and lived to tell the tale. Some species whispered that it was all bluff, that the humans could not possibly have been as dangerous as they claimed. Those species were welcome to test that theory. None ever did.